Hello YouTube, my name is Isabella and today we're finally going to be discussing my worst reads of 2021. Yes, it has taken me an incredibly long time to put this video up. I decided to get this one done out of the way first, and then we will be doing my best of the year next. I'm hoping to have them up in conjunction, like up on a Friday and then a Saturday, so it's not all negative, and I just like having them together for some reason in my mind. I like them being back to back. So we're going to discuss the absolute worst books, disappointing books, upsetting books, whatever descriptor you want to put in there, and I'll discuss why. Now, I feel like, of course, I have to put the usual disclaimer. If you don't like people talking about books negatively, this is not the video for you. I'm going to discuss 9 books that were either disappointing, bad, or a combination of the two. A lot of the 2-star books I'm going to talk about were more on the disappointing end or had potential. The 1-star books, which are 3 of them total, I'm going to discuss why I actively hated them, and they got the dreaded 1 star, which I don't whip out a lot. This video is going to be ranked from like best of the worst to worst of the worst, and you know what, let's just jump into the video. Book number 9 on this list is incredibly disappointing to have on this list because I had high hopes for it and I invested a lot of time in reading the first book to get to the second. It was a whole thing, and that's We Free the Stars by Hafsa Faizal. I have a interesting relationship with this series because the first time I read the first book, I didn't think I was quite ready in the mood for it. I didn't give it a proper chance. I initially gave it 2 stars. I reread it in January of 2021 and liked it a lot better. It was still 3-star, but I had a lot more positive feelings about it, so picked up We Free the Stars, and it disappointed me, and now I'm just mad. I think I have a review for the first one, but I don't think I bothered with the second one, which is a bummer. This book to me felt incredibly rushed and drawn out at the same time, which is a very interesting balance to achieve. The bottom line is the pacing was all over the place. The general consensus of the story felt very, very rushed, but then towards the end things were drawn out just to like extend angst. I found the plot really annoying, and I felt like it was going back and forth a lot. To piggyback off of this being drawn out, it really felt like there were moments that there were characters acting out of character just to deliberately extend the run time of this book, which was not necessary. This is well over 500 pages. Like, it didn't seem in line with the character's growth, and that really got under my skin. There were good moments in here. Unfortunately, they were few and far between. I was really disappointed with this book. I do want to try Hafsa's new book, The Tempest of Tea, whenever that comes up. I don't know when it's slated to come out, and I think that will be the tell whether or not I continue on reading her work. This next book I'm bitter about because it was another just fucking waste of time, and I feel like I'm the only one who thinks that. And maybe I'm just too old for these books now, but that's Chain of Iron by Cassandra Clare. I've been reading these books for a long time. There is an element of nostalgia with them, but I still enjoy them for the most part. This is number 50 million in the Shadowhunter world. This one was a gigantic waste of time. You want to talk about plot retreads, how there's literal plot points that happened in the first book that happen almost exactly in this one, and I'm just mad. I think I actually have a review or like somewhat chatty video discussing how irritated I was with this book. The kicker is there are a lot of character moments in here that I genuinely enjoyed. There's a relationship I'm very much invested in reading about. They are super angsty, but it's just something I enjoy, and I guess just the nostalgia of cheering for a very angsty relationship I could really get on board with. Or yeah, this is 650 pages of what? Of what? Adding no real new substance to the plot. Really good, fun, domestic character moments, but other than that, freaking waste of time. It drove me crazy. Clearly needs a better editor, but because Cassandra Clare is so popular, she doesn't get that anymore. And I just was disappointed with it, and I'm severely going to lower my expectations for the final book. Okay, we're going to discuss a book I'm not as mad at now, but when I first read it, Your Girl Was Bitter, and that is The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. Specifically because of the writing style. This was written, I think, starting in the 90s, so it's not that far back in time, but God, did the writing style feel ancient. It was way too overly descriptive, drawn out, and just so dry. I have a full review discussing it, and in that video I was a lot more bitter, but I'm not as mad about it now because I have continued on in the series exclusively via audio, and that has been a much better experience. I do still have complaints about Robert Jordan's characterization. I find it really odd that these characters who are supposed to love each other and like be best friends, they really kind of hate each other, and it's just so odd. The gender dynamics in this series drive me crazy. I'm thinking of doing a review or discussion on my thoughts of the first 3 books, like together in like a whole discussion, and then move on to book 4. I just need to write down some thoughts and film that. Sorry if the angle is off. My notebook hit my mic, which took my phone down as well, so the angle is probably now moved, which is annoying. Moving on to A Dark and Hollow Star by Ashley Shuttleworth. This one I was so excited about because I think it would have been the book of my dreams as a young teen. It gave all the vibes that I wanted from that paranormal urban fantasy-esque tale, and I'm really disappointed with this one. There were a lot of cool ideas and concepts in here. This is like a super queer version of maybe like OG City of Bones, but instead of like shadow hunters, angels, and demons, you have fae. And it's queer as hell, which sounded so good. But the writing in this book is rough. Ashley Shuttleworth really struggles. You could tell within an instant this is a debut. The amount of over description over stuff that is just so not relevant to the overall story. The world building in here is also atrocious. A lot of writers describe world building as an iceberg, in which the amount that is revealed is the tiny little tip that breaks through the surface, but the rest is basically for them to get a sense of the world themselves and all those details. Ashley Shuttleworth does not follow that idea and writes literally every single goddamn concept and idea and piece to the world building that they think is relevant, and it's just too much. It bogs down the story, it creates hell on the pacing, and it's just not enjoyable. Some of the stuff is cool, but a lot of it is not relevant to the story, and this book definitely could have been condensed and done a lot better. I also think it's very strange that there are 2 big plot threads and main characters that don't interact, I think, until like at least 2/3 of the way into the novel, and that just was just weird and unsettling, and it's hard to get on board with like a possible friendship dynamic or them at all caring about each other, because they are literal strangers to each other when like big climactic things was happening. I remember being a fan of the queer relationships. I was really on board with those vibes, but it is not enough for me to continue on in the series and get over the bad writing. Oh my god, this one was a big struggle. It was very disappointing. This next book, book number 5 on this list, I own, but I don't know where it went. So I'm just gonna flash a picture, and that's Son of the Storm by Sugi Davies Okungbawa. Ironically, I still think I have footage of a review that I filmed for this book that I never posted. I wonder if I still have the footage and if it's even worth me salvaging. It would have been like November or maybe October. This is one that I was a little upset with or bitter with because it started well, it had a lot of potential. When I first finished it, I thought it was okay. I had a lot of problems with it, but overall I felt okay about it. I was maybe going to continue on with the series, but the longer I've thought about it, the further I've gotten away from the book, and even through the process of that review that doesn't exist, I liked it less and less and was actually really disappointed with it. I really liked the idea of behind the world. I really liked the themes that were going to be explored with it, but I found the plot to be really boring, or like the second half, like the adventure survival tale, to be just not exciting, not interesting. I always wanted to be back in the city that is supposed to be where the story takes place as opposed to outside of it. I really didn't care about that. Also, I could not stand the main character. I think his name is Danso. Ooh, I actually remembered. I'm impressed with myself. He sucks. I could not stand him, and he's supposed to be a sympathetic main character. He was incredibly selfish to me and isn't self-aware of that, but Danso sucks as a character. He's incredibly self-centered, incredibly selfish, and I don't think much of that changes even throughout the end of the story, which is really odd because he does go through a lot, but his lack of ability to think about anyone else, mainly like a friendship that he has with an indentured servant, and how selfish he is and not thinking of anyone else, is so frustrating. I also don't like the way the story is constructed. I thought the prose was actually pretty decent. I liked the descriptions throughout. I could picture a lot of the stuff going on, but the construction and the perspective shifts were a real like struggle point of mine. There are like a few main characters where you get their perspectives all the time, but as the story goes along, with whatever is convenient, the author will throw in another perspective of a character we haven't met yet, or we'll just get like that one scene from them. I just thought that was so odd. I don't think helps with the pace of the story. It felt like a little bit of a writing cheat, and I didn't like the way the story was constructed. I'm very disappointed in this book. I was very excited for it. I don't know if I pre-ordered it, but I definitely bought it excited thinking I was going to love it, and did not, unfortunately. The last of the 2 stars, this final book of the 2 stars borders on a 1. It's definitely holds that number 4 spot, because I think on a more bitter day I would have wielded the 1 star with ease, and I'm so glad I'm filming this video because that means I get to get rid of it now. And that's Queen of the Conquered by Case and Calendar. This book sucks. I absolutely hate the way this book is written. We have a main character who, by looking at someone, can like see their past or some sort of version of that magic. And instead of Case and Calendar picking and choosing when to actually use that power, every single character that our main character, Sigourney Rose, something like that, looks at, every time she looks at someone, you get their entire goddamn backstory. And that's all the book is. For like 70% of it is all backstories on other people, and I couldn't stand it. Like, it's just not relevant to the greater story, so it's so frustrating to be in her head. I also couldn't stand the fact that this is supposed to be a revenge story, yet this character has no agency or does no action to get her revenge. She's just kind of there and things are happening and she's just like, oh yeah, okay, things are happening. I was like, are you kidding me? How do you not have agency? The people, these colonizers and horrific people have like killed your family, and you're determined to get revenge, yet she does nothing. It doesn't have any forward momentum in the story, and it's just not a fun perspective to be reading, or to be experiencing. It's not a fun experience at all. I really didn't like this book. There's a ton of exposition, a ton of filler, and I really disliked our main character. This was a 2 stars, like almost a 1, or like a 1.5. This one definitely was no good for me. To begin my 1 stars, these ones fully I actively dislike and or hate, and probably should not have finished and just should have given up on them, but oh well. The first being The Winter's Curse by Marie Rudkowski. I'm bitter about this one. I spent years looking for the edition of the first book. I own the second 2 and 3 and didn't have the first. Found it and took years to read it, and boy did it blow up in my face. This book is not good. I think the author just should have fully leaned into the fantasy romance elements because the plot and story are so weak. Paper thin. Just absolutely terrible. The world building, who is she? I just, no, just absolutely not. I know that that's not necessarily the focus of the story, but the fantasy romance should have been the biggest focus. There's a lot of wasted time with really weak and just poorly done world building and filler plot. But it's not even like good filler plot in regards to the romance, so I just don't understand what the author was trying to achieve with this book. I just don't get it. And maybe all of this could have been forgiven if I liked the characters at all, but I could not stand either character. Both of them suck on their own, and together as a romance, they suck together. As a pairing, as a duo, I didn't find the chemistry at all with the circumstances and situation that they're in. It just, I don't know, the romance just didn't make sense in my brain. It's also honestly kind of disappointing because I think the setup for book 2 could be great in terms of angst and stuff if I liked the romance, but I don't. I couldn't stand the romance, couldn't stand the characters, and that is the biggest reason why this book is a 1 star. It just felt like a waste of time. These characters suck. Now, the only romance book I have on this list, this book is bad. God, this book is bad. I don't know how this was published or like not edited better. Yikes, I hate this book. That's Intercepted by Alexa Martin. Every single character in here, the main 2 and every surrounding character, is thinner than a single sheet of paper. There's no depth to them, nothing interesting, nothing compelling about them, and they are all defined by very, very basic traits and are not allowed to operate outside of that. The side characters are so wooden and meant to only be like the evil mean bitches or her bad ex. Like, this author couldn't think of any way to give anyone any little bit of depth, and just, I guess, to sell you on the new romance that's happening, and it doesn't work. It's cheap in terms of writing. It's not good. The main 2, I didn't care about their romance at all. I didn't understand why they were so attracted to one another so early on. The writing is also absolutely horrific. There are a ton of hashtags in here to be, I guess, hashtag relatable, but God, does it interrupt the flow of a normal pace of a story. It is not something that I want in a book at all. And on top of that, I just felt like there wasn't enough description in here. There's a lot of filler, but not actually enough description as to what's going on in the story, which is just a really odd and confusing mix. The third act breakup in here is just stupid. Basically all on a misunderstanding, and it's just so dumb. And there are absolutely absurd situations too. I forgot to mention this before. I don't know why the author decided to sell this as a romance, because we actually have our main character at one point assaulted. She gets like punched in the face by some stalker, and she goes like running to the love interest's house so like he can save her. And it just, romance, I don't know, it just doesn't seem like a thing you want in like escapist romance when it's not like supposed to be, you know, a dark romance. This is a contemporary cutesy whatever romance, and it's not cutesy. It's not a fun thing to be reading what's happening to your main character, but just so weirdly placed in the story. And there are quite a few instances of just weird situations that just don't seem to have a place in a rom-com. I don't know. I'm very bitter about this one as well. This is bad. The final book I'm going to talk about, I literally couldn't spend time to write notes. All I did was write pain, because that's how that book felt while reading it, and that's none other than goddamn Dune by Frank Herbert. I read this from my library in preparation for the movie, and I remember hitting a specific point, and I was like, well, I've reached the point of no return. I'm finishing this book so that I can definitively tell you that I think this is one of the worst books I've ever read. It's not good. I know the concepts were cool and innovative when it came out in the 60s, and that is true. There are some very cool, innovative concepts, but the way this book is written is awful. I almost said terrific. It's terribly horrible, no good, very bad day. I cannot stand Frank Herbert's writing. Not to mention that this book is incredibly racist, homophobic, Islamophobic. Like, you could literally go down the list of all the things. I couldn't stand Paul. A fucking Gary Stu if I've ever read one. I cannot believe the critiques people would lob at like Rey from Star Wars, and then also go in the same breath stan Paul. God, I couldn't stand the way this was written. Again, the amount of times that Frank Herbert deigns to have a character thought pop in through like the regular text that is A, very simple and easy to infer even without having that line. B, interrupts the pacing because you just have these stupid character inserts when you're trying to get the actual part of the story and what's going on. And like, it's just like he's treating you with kid gloves. Like, I don't need his mother to describe why Paul is having a hard time with something. You can get it from context. Don't treat me like a child. This was literally a painful reading experience. It took me so long to get through. I just couldn't stand the writing. The book is rather boring. I cannot believe how much of time is just wasted being in the desert. I don't know. I just also find it so weird what Frank Herbert decides to focus on. Like, there are a lot of like galactic politics and stuff, and the very few instances you get of that is actually really interesting, but you get so little of it and it's not focused on. It's maybe focused on the rest of the series, but as far as the first book goes, like the be all and end all of sci-fi, I just really, really hated this book. So that is it for all the worst books I read in 2021. I'm glad this is over because it feels like I've purged all of these thoughts, and hopefully I don't have to think about these books for quite some time. Let me know down in the comments below if you have any thoughts on any of the books I mentioned, plus maybe one of your worst books of the year. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you again very soon, hopefully tomorrow. Bye.